Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2004 Ford Explorer. The problem we have is that the customer was complaining about a smell of gasoline, and when I opened up underneath the hood here to take a look at it, because it is pretty strong, the smell. Once I got underneath the hood, it was a pretty clean-cut issue. When you disconnect the vacuum line on the pressure regulator, you can see that there's fuel being sucked into the fuel line itself. So the customer also told me that the check engine light periodically will pop on and go off, on and off. And I'm assuming that it was the fuel being pulled into the vacuum line. But I scanned it just to find out what it was, and it came up with a P0193, and it was a fuel pressure. Is the fuel rail pressure circuit a high input? Which is most likely caused just by the bad pressure regulator, especially when the regulator itself is leaking fuel into the vacuum line. So, all right, let me bring you in there. I got the vehicle running right now, and the pressures are in the normal range. They're at like 49, 50, right in that range right there, and it's running pretty decent. And right now, I don't even smell the fuel. So let's get in there, and I'm going to show you the fuel pressure, and then I'm going to show you how to go about replacing the fuel pressure sensor on the rail. This one is actually not too bad. Some of them you have to take the upper part of the plenum off to gain access to it. This one seems like it's right in a location where you can get to it without pulling the plenum off, which is kind of unusual for these Fords, because the only ones I've ever seen, you got to pull the plenum off on it. But let me get in there and I'll show you where it's located, and then we're going to go ahead and replace it. And the first thing you want to do before you do anything, and that's why this truck is running right now. The reason the truck is running is because I'm going to disconnect either the fuel pump relay or the fuel pump fuse to let the vehicle run out of fuel pressure, so that way there will not be that much of a surge of fuel coming out when I pull the regulator out. Even though it's going to run out of fuel, you're still going to get a little bit of pressure coming out of there, so you want to make sure you're prepared. You want to use a fluorescent light, or you want to use any kind of a non-exploding light, so that's very important. You don't want to have any fuel hit a bulb and then have a catastrophe. So let me show you the tools. We're going to go inside the vehicle, and we're going to get started. We're going to get this job done. So let's go inside, and I'll show you what's going on in there first. Okay, as you can see, you know what, let's shut that down. As you can see, there's your fuel pump pressure right there, and it's in the normal range. It's not going crazy. I've seen them already where they're up to like 70 and 80 pounds, and you tap on the fuel pump regulator, and you'll see the pressure drop right back down, but that's not the case here. But we are going to change it because the fuel is actually being pulled into the vacuum line, and that's never good. All right, so first thing we're going to do now is we're going to go under the hood, and we're going to find out where. I'll show you. This is our regulator right up inside over here. That's where the regulator is located. As I said, most of the time they're underneath the plenum, but this one here is not. So let's go in the back, and we're going to find out where the fuse is to disconnect the fuel pump. Okay, so now we are actually in the, I'll back up a little bit and I'll show you. This is the central, or the battery junction box, and this is what it looks like underneath the hood. And here, we're going to go to the fuel pump relay. It's fuse F1.5, it's a 20 amp. So we're going to zoom in up here. And there is the F1.5, that's the fuse, and then over here is the fuel pump relay. So we're going to take out that fuse right there, and we'll get the vehicle to stall out. So, all right, let's go outside, and we'll disconnect that fuse. Okay, this is our battery box right here. We're going to take this and open it up. You just lift up on this little tab, it comes right out. This is the fuse right here, so we're going to remove that fuse, and we'll see if the vehicle stalls out. as you can hear, is starting to change the idle. So we're going to go inside now and we're going to just race it up until it dies out. Right now we're just running on the fuel that's in the rail. You can see the pressure is dropping. That's it, she died. Let's try it one more time. Okay. All right, so now we'll shut the key off. Okay. So now even though we ran out of fuel, when we take out that regulator, we are still going to have fuel pressure. So let's get set up and let's get started. Okay, this is an example of what kind of tools you're going to need to actually change that pressure regulator. Now I'm not pushing standard or any other type of product one over the other. This just happens to be the one that I've gotten from my local parts store to replace. That's the pressure sensor itself. And what happens is it's pulling, actually I'll show you when I take it apart, but it's actually dripping fuel out of that line right there and it's pulling it into the vacuum system. I kind of thought that I would find like a rich mixture type code, but there was not. But that's the fuel rail pressure sensor. And as you can see, there's an O-ring right on there. So when you pull this out, we are going to get a little bit of gasoline squirting out. We have a pair of a very long ratchet. We have an extension with a 30 number 30 Torx on it to remove the Torx screws that are in there. A pair of needle nose pliers in case I drop something, and a screwdriver to actually push the vacuum line off, or a pair of pliers like that to push the hose off, whatever I can do. These are the non-exploding lights that we are going to use, because if we get any fuel on them, we never have to worry about anything. So we are going to use these two lights and, of course, our fluorescent light, which is right there, so we can gain some light on the where we're going to be working. All right, so all right, let's get in there. I'll show you what we're going to do, and we're going to get this done. Okay, so this is the regulator right here. As you can see, we have a number 30 Torx here, and we have a number 30 Torx there, and we're going to disconnect that vacuum line right there, and then we're going to take that plug off inside here. All right, so we're going to take off that plug there as well, and then we'll pull that pressure regulator out of the line itself. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take off that line, that vacuum line right there. We'll pull it back. We're just going to push it back with a screwdriver just to get it out of our way, and then we'll pull it back a little further. I don't know if you can see the fuel dripping out of that line, but all right. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to unplug that electrical connector right there. There's a little tab on the top that you need to push down. So we're going to push down on it, and then we're going to pull it out. Just like that. We're going to pull it back out of the way. just like this so we don't get any fuel on it. I'm just going to move that out of the way just like that, but we'll come back to that in a second. And then we're going to take out these two screws right here. Like I said, it was a number 30 Torx. Now you want to make sure you have a rag handy because you are going to leak fuel in there. So we're just going to crack these loose a little bit. Just like that. All right, now we'll take these screws out just a little bit. Like I told you, we are going to have a little bit of fuel leakage in here, so be aware of that. So we're going to take this off to the side. Take that second one out. Now, just in case you couldn't get in there, you could use a magnet to lift them out if you had to. Now, we are going to take our rag. We're going to be very careful because when we take it out, we're going to get a little bit of a surge of fuel coming out of there. We're just going to take it and pull it up nice and easy. Watch you don't break any other lines. I don't know if you can hear that. Okay. And that is the fuel coming out of the vacuum line. Not that much, but it's coming out through there nevertheless. All right, so now this is trash. We're just going to grab a rag. We're going to clean up where the new pressure regulator is going to go, because you don't want to get dirt on that O-ring. So we'll just clean it up a little bit. This is our new pressure sensor. We lubricated the O-ring right here. And now we're just going to push it down into the opening here. Let's get the light so you can see here. And it just slid right down. Now we're going to catch both of the bolts that we previously took out. We're just going to screw them in by hand. You want to make sure both bolts are caught before you tighten anything down. Now we're just going to turn it by hand all the way down. Same thing on this side here. Now there most likely is torque specs for these bolts, but we are not going to torque them down. We're just going to snug them down a little bit. Now remember, you're going into it's plastic, the sensor. You don't want to crack it. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our vacuum line, and we're just going to put it on there. And we're just going to pull it. Now, you don't want to grip it really tight. You're just grabbing it and you're pulling it on very, very, very little. Now we'll take the electrical connector and we'll plug it back on where we previously took it off. put this on, you should hear it snap in place. You always want to listen for that little click. All right, now we're going to move this light out of the way. We're just going to reinstall that we previously took off before. We're going to reinstall the fuse, just like this. All right, now we're going to go in the vehicle, and we're going to start it up, and we're going to make sure we have no fuel leaks from there at all. Make sure we have no leaks in there at all. As you can see, it's nice and dry. All right, let's go back in the vehicle and let's check the pressure. And here's our fuel pump pressure. You can see it's actually 49, 50, 54, whatever. So we did take the code out of here that was in here for the fuel pump, the P0193. So now we have no codes in there. So what we're going to do next is go underneath the hood and close everything up. All right, so that's it. We're all set. Everything worked out perfectly. When we put the pressure regulator back in, we lubricated this O-ring with some silicone before we put it back in. We cleaned off the base underneath here on the fuel rail that this was going into, so that we had no foreign matter going in there and possibly causing this O-ring to leak. We made sure our vacuum line was reconnected on here, and of course we made sure that the plug in here was not only plugged in, but plugged in all the way, and when you pushed it, you actually heard it snap in place. So now this job is finished, it's out the door. We are going to drive it with the scan tool on there. We want to monitor the pressure to make sure everything is okay. I'm pretty confident that P0193, the high pressure, is because this sensor here was no good. It's a very common problem on these Fords. And like I said, this one was easier than most. Most of these on the Ford Explorer 4.0 is under the plenum, where you have to remove the plenum to gain access to it. But this one here is actually is not really too bad. It's right there in the open. That's it. It's out the door, on to the next one. All right, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.